let's go back for a minute. And I want to get to the berm because, again, that could be an additional issue. If I got the timeline right, Julian started work in 2013 on the site, right? And then through 2013, through the early fall of 2016, the pile grew as opposed to shrink during that period, or probably the spring of 2016, right, in the March timeframe, is what Mr. Tetro said. And then neighbors started to see the growth, and we started to see that things weren't as they appeared to be or were supposed to be, right? So through that early part, the pile's growing. There's more stuff coming in than going out, right? Also during that time period, we find out that the testing, Mr. Tetro, you had said earlier, hey, you know, I was getting representation that the testing was being done for contaminants on the site as it would be, right? And that testing in actuality wasn't being done until September of that year, right? To make sure that everything was proper, right? And then in September of the year, it was found out that we got a problem here. This stuff is growing. We're gonna start testing this, right? And then Mr. Carey comes along in the fall of that year, and you happen to see that stuff gets dumped there, and then I guess there's a third party that comes in and says we're seeing stuff dumped here, right?
No, actually.
Okay, so explain that last part to me.
Okay, from September through December, we had a licensed LEP on site doing random testing.
Right.
In September, I had notified Julian that we would not be renewing the contract, right? That we just let it expire.
Makes sense.
And kind of, frankly, stop arguing whether the pile was going up or down, and let's take a survey and see where it is. And they had 3 months' notice, so they could get it down if they chose to.
Right.
During that random testing, on November 29th, was the date of the test, was when our LEP saw the Julian trucks come in and make their deposit, if you will. Right. However, on November 29th, we didn't know that yet because we didn't have the test back.
Right.
So literally until December 13th, that was our first indication when the test came back that there were contaminants on site. That's why we moved so quickly to shut the yard down, notify DEEP, and I believe that was the day when Mr. Michelangelo reached out to Mr. Carey, if I was hearing him correctly.
Right. No, I think that's what you said. That's exactly right. Thank you. So I get it. So here's my question. For 3 years, Mr. Bartlett and Mr. Michelangelo had been responsible for the pile, a pile that was growing, a pile that testing wasn't being done. When we did the testing, we found that there was contaminants, yet we still left Mr. Michelangelo and Mr. Bartlett, who hadn't been doing their jobs, in charge of the pile, in charge of the cleanup of the pile, in charge of the remediation of the pile, and in charge of the berm. Why?
Because at that point, all we knew is that Julian had come in and dumped a load of PCBs there, PCB-laden soil.
Well, we knew the pile had been growing, and we knew we hadn't been testing for contamination up until the fall, till you guys got involved.
Right, and we knew that we hadn't been testing for it. We didn't know what Julian had been doing or not at that point. And
did we ask at that time, and what did they respond?
Yeah, I'm not clear on their response at that point. They've been very difficult to get that information from since then. So, however, we knew that from our testing that the pile had been used appropriately. The material in the pile was appropriately based on our random testing over a 4-month period.
Right. It just seemed that we were at a part there that we could have stopped this in its tracks, and we didn't. And
well, in essence, everything. I'm sorry.
Yeah, no, that's fine. I understand. But I want to